You're watching HCAM TV.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. Tom Nappy here, and today we are joined by Director of Public Works in Hopkinton, John Westerling. John, how are you today?
I'm terrific. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon to you, and as always, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
So first off, can you just kind of talk about what it was like during the whole virus pandemic as far as the DPW was concerned, and were you guys able to get everything done that you normally do, or were things backed up?
So it was certainly a challenging time for everyone, but for the Department of Public Works, it was challenging because we had to continue to serve those vital needs of the community by providing those essential services. At the same time, ensuring that we were protecting our employees and the residents. So we had a lot of challenges, and we relied on our partners in the Board of Health. We also relied on the notices that were coming out from the governor's office as to how to best protect ourselves while providing those services. Public Works, except for the administrative side, isn't something that can be performed remotely. We have to come in, we have to make sure that the water's clean, that the sewer pump stations are flowing, that the streets are clean and swept, and that our catch basins are being repaired. So we had a lot of things that we had to do on the streets while protecting our health and safety. So we developed some protocols based on what we heard from, again, the Board of Health and the governor's office. And those protocols ensured that we were able to keep ourselves clean, keep ourselves safe, keep ourselves healthy, and still be able to do all of those things that we do on a daily basis. There was so many unknowns when we look back in mid-March, what wasn't known about how to protect ourselves, about COVID itself. So we took extra precautions, and I'm happy to say that the entire team of Public Works employees, we haven't lost a moment due to COVID-related illness. So the team took it very seriously. They took their commitment to providing those necessary services to the community very seriously. And again, we were able to make it through to the point where we provided all those services. Nobody got sick. We protected ourselves and the public.
That's really tremendous that you really didn't lose a beat with this whole virus pandemic. Was there any differences as far as who was coming into the office and who wasn't, or was everybody still needing to come in?
So for the offices, our administrative staff, our administrative manager and our administrative assistant, they both work remotely, and they have since around the end of March. Our office was closed to the public. However, we still continued to provide those essential services as far as permits, answering questions related to water billing and sewer billing, and providing the necessary information that residents were calling and asking for. So we were able to still provide those administrative functions and ensure that our billing got out. So that was all covered. And then as far as the highway, water, and sewer, and the managers of those departments and myself, we continued to come in on a daily basis. We were able to answer citizens' questions either by telephone or through email. We did shut down both the recycling center and the white metal collection day, only because those are two functions that work in very closely with the public. So out of an abundance of caution, we suspended those temporarily. I'm happy to say that it was probably beginning of July, we reinstituted the recycling center on Saturday morning, so that's open again. We also are looking to restart the white metal collection last Saturday of every month. We're going to be doing that in July, end of July. So a couple of precautions that we're asking residents to observe while they are taking advantage of those two. But those two functions, again, recycling center is up and operational, and the white metal collection will be the end of the last Saturday at the end of the month. I'm just checking my calendar, which will be the 25th. So July 25th, white metal collection will occur on Fruit Street.
Will there be any differences in policy as far as the recycling with the virus?
Yeah, so what we're asking at the recycling center is that if you know the recycling center layout at all, there's a line of dumpsters that take the recyclables. We're asking folks to only have 3 vehicles at a time at the dumpsters to try to limit the interaction of residents. We're asking folks to stay in their car until it's their turn at the recycling center. And then we're also asking folks to wear face masks or coverings while they are at the recycle center. And we're going to employ essentially the same precautions over at the white metal collection. So folks, there'll be a limited number of folks that can pull up to the dumpster. There'll be limited interactions with the DPW employees, and they must also wear a face covering while we're there.
So they have to stay in their car. Does that mean the DPW person's taking the recycled items out of the car?
No, they have to stay in their car until it's their turn. So
okay.
if there's a queue of cars waiting, since there can only be 3 people at the dumpsters at a time, we just don't want people getting out and walking up or otherwise walking to other cars. So that's why we're asking folks to remain in their vehicles.
Okay. And so I understand that some road work has began recently. Can you talk about some of the projects that are happening right now that the DPW is involved in?
Sure. We have ongoing road projects that we're conducting ourselves. So that would be repairing catch basins, repairing potholes, that type of thing that we do on a daily basis. We have been sweeping the streets. That's nearly complete, but we've been sweeping the streets since the end of March. So there are 2 other projects that will be commencing with different contractors. And the first is over on Cedar Street. We have that water main replacement that occurred last fall. Unfortunately, the contractor, they filed bankruptcy over the winter, so they weren't able to come back in the springtime and complete that project. So the insurance company for the contractor rebid the project, and they selected a contractor. And we just recently signed a contract with that new contractor, and they're going to be starting this Thursday, on removing the old trench and the settled asphalt and the stuff that is not pleasant to drive over. They're going to be removing that. They're going to be replacing a foot of gravel, compacting it, and then coming in and putting pavement down. So Cedar Street will have a brand new 8-foot wide lane of fresh pavement down that the right-hand side of the northbound lane. That will all be replaced in about 3 weeks' time, weather permitting. The other project that we're doing is our own annual pavement management plan. And this year we have $1,150,000 worth of both local funding and Chapter 90 funds from Mass DOT. So that work is going to commence. We've got 2 different crews that are coming in. The first one will be doing crack sealing, and that work will begin sometime in either late July or early August. And then we have another crew that'll be coming in, and we're going to reconstruct 5 different roads in town. And what reconstruction means is they come in with a large machine, they grind up the old asphalt that's there, they mix it in with the underlying gravel, and then they put down brand new asphalt. So we've got 5 different roads. We're going to be doing Clydesdale Lane and Palomino Drive, both of those off of Saddle Hill. We're going to be doing Wedgwood Drive in its entirety. We're going to be doing Elm Street from Lumber Street Extension up to the dead end. So behind the Mobil gas station. And then we're also going to be doing Claflin Street. And that work, we're scheduling now with the contractor to determine what's the soonest time that they can get in to conduct that work.
That's great. And I know you mentioned that the DPW throughout the virus pandemic, they were able to stay up to date with everything and didn't really fall behind. But was there a delay at all in getting any of this summer road work started?
There was a slight delay in the scheduling of that work, but it wasn't related to COVID. What it was,
Ah.
well, I guess indirectly it was related to COVID because we didn't have our annual town meeting in May. So that meant that the funds were not available as they typically would be on July 1st. So we had to wait to determine when town meeting would occur and when those funds would be freed up from the general fund to be able to fund all the work that I just described. So once we worked with the town manager's office in the finance department on the 1/12 budgeting and ensuring that we would have those funds available, then we were able to contract with the contractors. So minor delay based on the side effects of COVID.
So, was there any funds that the DPW was not able to get because of the fact that town meeting got postponed?
No, no. On these capital projects, we're able to get that funded through the special legislation that was passed to allow for 1/12 spending, 1/12 budgeting. And that allowed for all of the DPW expenses to be fully covered up until we have our town meeting in September. And at that point, all the funds will be appropriated.
Ah, that's great. It's good that all this important road work still gets to happen despite the fact that town meeting got held up. Do, as far as how long this road work takes, is there any effect, such as like limitations of the amount of people on the crew or anything like that, that could make it go maybe a little slower than normal because of cautions with the virus?
So it might be a little slower than normal, but I don't think it's going to be noticeable to the folks that are driving on the streets. For example, when we completed the work over at Hayden Row and Chestnut Street, they had to observe uh, OSHA regulations and COVID regulations to ensure that they were protecting themselves and the residents and myself and the police detail officer and the engineers. So that adds some minor delays because you have to be more careful, you have to be more cautious, you can't have folks that are too close together. So with the contractors that are doing all the work that I previously described, they're going to also have to have their own protocols that ensure that they're protecting themselves and the residents and those that are around them and the motorists. So those will all be observed. They'll have to do attestations on a daily basis that they don't have COVID, that they don't feel any of the side effects of COVID. But I think that in general, once that work begins, you'll see that it's going to go almost as rapidly or on the same timeline that it would have even if COVID were not present.
Oh, that's great. So some of the submitted questions that we had for you were: I see new sidewalks went in on East Main Street. Is all the Legacy Farm sidewalk work completed?
Those sidewalks were part of the Legacy Farms requirements. And I believe at this point that they have fulfilled that requirement. And the requirement was to go essentially from the intersection of East Main and Legacy up to the center of town. We had existing sidewalks there, and over time, the developer has constructed those new sidewalks. And I believe that essentially at this point, they have met that criteria. However, that's really a question for the planning board to determine what other requirements that were associated with the sidewalk. You may notice that they have been doing a lot of work at that intersection to install the new traffic signals. And that was another requirement of the Legacy Farms approval.
Excellent. Another question was: are new traffic lights going up on 135 at Legacy North and South? And that might again be a question for the planning board, but
Well, they are, in fact, the contractor has mobilized. The town has received, reviewed, and approved the design of those new traffic signals. The contractor has been out there installing the conduit and the electrical lines. They've also installed the foundations for the pedestals and the mast arms that will support those new traffic signals. So that work is ongoing. I suspect that over the next few weeks, folks are going to see that there'll be a lot more activity at that intersection as they start to bring in the poles, they start to hang the lights. There's going to be some restriping of the approaches to that intersection. But at the end of the day, I think that we're going to find that there's a lot more safety and safe movements and maneuvering of vehicles there. So that work is ongoing and will be complete soon. Not a town project, it's being done by the developer, but the town is overseeing it and approving the design.
Oh, okay. And one of the things I'm really curious about was so how was it around the DPW facility during the virus? Was there limitations on like how many people could be in a room or who could be where in the building, anything like that?
So obviously, we had to, as part of our protecting ourselves, we had to ensure that we were following all the protocols that were from, again, the Board of Health, from the governor's office. So those included, we couldn't have folks inside groups of greater than, at one point it was only 10 people. We had to ensure that while we were using vehicles, that we could only have one person per vehicle. Those have since been somewhat lessened to where if we've got more than one person in a vehicle, they have to be wearing a face covering. So yes, we had to be very careful about where we met. We had to split up some of our teams. The morning meetings had to be divided into two. We had to be careful about how many people were in a vehicle, limiting it to one. But again, credit to the entire DPW team and the managers of those departments for taking it very seriously, following the protocols, and making sure that, again, we didn't lose any time due to COVID-related illness.
Yeah, that's great. You guys certainly do a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's great that you were able to stay up to date with everything during this horrible virus pandemic. And it's certainly, I'm sure, made it a little more difficult. But
yeah,
the fact
to say
that
the
you guys,
least.
Yeah,
to say the least. But with the proper precautions, again, the services that the DPW provides to the community are essential services.
right.
The water, the sewer, the safe roads. With our contractors, the collection of municipal solid waste and recyclables, maintaining the parks, the cemetery, burials still had to go on. So we had to find a way, and we did find a way, and we did manage to keep ourselves safe while we were protecting our employees, the public, and still providing all those essential services.
And I guess most importantly, I should ask, how is everyone over there at the DPW doing? Everybody healthy and good?
Yes, again, we are very thankful that we have lost no time to COVID-related illness. So again, the guys, the team, the men and the women that work here, all are taking it seriously, still providing that essential services to the town. So we're very thankful that we're still working, thankful that we have jobs, thankful that everyone is healthy and protecting one another.
So was there anything that the DPW had to do in relation to the virus and by this, I mean, like any kind of like task that the DPW had to help with, such as any type of sanitization of certain things or anything like that?
So the things that we were concerned with sanitizing were first and foremost our hands. We had to make sure that we had adequate supplies for folks to wash their hands, hand sanitizer. We also had to make sure that we had adequate supplies for keeping surfaces clean. And those surfaces would be within the building, so tables, doorknobs, that type of thing. So the team was very conscientious to ensure that they were wiping down those surfaces. The tables, after lunch, they would wipe it down. We were able to work with our managers and the facilities department to find spray bottles. You couldn't find wipes, you still can't find wipes. So we were able to find spray bottles and paper towels, and we found a product that would sanitize those surfaces. We also provided all of that, the sanitization product and the paper towels. Each vehicle has its own sprayer with sanitization in it. So one of the protocols that we instituted was at the beginning of the day, or at the beginning of the shift, folks would wipe down the interior of a vehicle, all the touch surfaces. And then at the end of the day, they would do the same thing, just in case someone went into a different truck the following day, there wouldn't be any cross contamination. So yeah, we had to, we went through a lot of wipes initially when we could find wipes. The DPW is looking for wipes, so if anyone has a source, let us know.
I think we all are.
Yeah, but it was using those sanitization products and just following the protocols.
Right. So as far as the summer road work that you mentioned, do you have a timetable as far as when all the big projects will be completed?
So the Cedar Street Road will be completed within 3 weeks' time, weather permitting. That's a paving job. So if it rains, we could certainly use the rain. So not only a source for wipes, but a source for rainwater. We'll take that as well. So the Cedar Street should be done in about 3 weeks' time. The crack sealing project, that's another thing that's weather dependent, but that should be done by mid to end of August. And then those roadway reconstruction programs, we're looking to start that at the end of this month, and hopefully working with a contractor, they'll be able to come in, deconstruct or reclaim those roads, and then get them paved in a timely fashion. So we're hoping to get all of our work done by the end of August or at the latest mid-September.
That's wonderful. Are there any projects coming up in the fall or winter that you know
of? No. Short answer, no. So for town meeting approval, we are looking at a couple of things. One, we've got a water main replacement project. And if you bear with me just 1 second, it's out on one of the island roads, and the name escapes me, so I apologize right now. So we're replacing several hundred feet of water main out there. With town meeting approval, we'll be able to do that work, and that we hope to get done in the fall. There's another water main replacement project, which is on Hayden Row, roughly between the pump station or College Street and the Milford line. That is a water project that we hope to get going this fall. Beyond that, it's just going to be the day-to-day activities, providing those essential services and prepping for, I hate to say it, prepping for winter.
Yep. Hopefully it's not coming anytime soon. I think we could all use some good weather right now.
You could use a little rain right now. The
Right.
bit of rain that we got here and there helps us, but we could really use some sustained rain. We're in a period of a drought here in this area. Our water supplies, our water crew is doing a great job, and the manager ensuring that we're not going below the levels, that our wells will run dry. But we're really dependent on Mother Nature for that to bring us the rainwater that we need. But we're in good shape for right now.
And I know this is probably more of a question for Eric Carty, but do you know anything about the current status of the drought and what some of the regulations are that people should know about? And if you don't, that's totally okay. I know it's not really in your area of expertise.
Well, we have watering bans that go on from May through September, and those are posted on our website. Essentially, you can sprinkler your lawn twice per week, and the days are listed on the website where depending upon where you live, when you can sprinkler your lawns. At this point, the drought is not severe enough yet where we have to change those provisions. We're hoping that Mother Nature again will provide us with the rainwater that we need so that we don't have to go to the next level of banning outdoor water use. And if you remember, was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we were in a very severe drought, and we had to ensure that we had to further restrict that outdoor watering. We're not at that point yet. It doesn't look like we're going to go there, but it totally depends on the weather and how much rain we get.
Right. You just never know. If you're going to get all sun and no rain, I mean, obviously the drought situation is just going to get worse.
Tom, we were supposed to get more than 3 inches between Friday and Sunday morning over this past weekend. We got barely any. Saturday was a glorious day. The sun was shining. it was great from that perspective to be able to get out and enjoy the day. But we were really looking forward to that 3 inches of rain.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be in Narragansett all week, so it was beautiful beach weather. But definitely not a lot of rain in the area for sure. And I know there was a couple of storms that were being eyed to perhaps hit us, and it seems like they really just kind of totally missed us.
In my next life, I would love to come back as a meteorologist. But what happened was, I guess it blew out to sea, so we didn't get that rain that we were looking forward to, unfortunately.
Right, but hopefully we will get it. I don't know how this week's looking. I think the next few days it's supposed to be nice. I don't see a lot of rain, but we'll see what happens. I don't think anybody actually ever knows what it's going to do.
And every day the forecast is the same: 20% chance of rain.
Right.
But we haven't had that 20% hit us. There was some hope this morning because there were some light rain showers, but that didn't amount to anything.
Right. And so we only have a few minutes left. I just want to ask you, is there anything else that you want to get out there, or anything that we didn't touch on that you want the public to know about?
Nothing from a DPW project perspective. I think what I'd like to just say is thank you to the residents for your understanding as the DPW had to modify some of its operations and suspend some of its programs. We truly appreciate your understanding so that we could ensure that we were keeping ourselves safe and the residents safe. And again, just to reiterate my thanks and appreciation to the entire team and the managers who manage that team to ensure that they were following the protocols to keep themselves safe and to continue to provide those essential services that the community depends on. And Tom, I want to thank you for this opportunity today to get some of the information out about the projects and some of the upcoming work that we have. Look forward to doing this again. Truly appreciate it, and thank you, and thank the residents for your support.
Absolutely. And certainly keep us up to date with everything and how everything is going. And we'll get you back on again to give us an update with everything going on. But thanks so much for joining us, John. And we wish you and everybody at the DPW good health. And you guys do great work in town. And everybody should be very appreciative for the hard work that you guys do. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it.
All right. That was John Westerling, the director of the Department of Public Works in Hopkinton. And coming up for the next part of the show, we're going to play a pre-recorded segment. But right now, Matt Clark's going to step in and give us a little HCAM Insider and let you know what's coming up. Matt, take it away.
Thanks, Tom. Well, just real quick, tonight at 7 p.m., we have the planning board meeting that will be airing on HCAM TV and on YouTube as well. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking with Jeff Doherty, and then we're going to have Ashok Ghosh on the show on Wednesday. Wednesday night, we're going to have The Gathering in Quarantine, as always. And then on Thursday, we're going to have Jake Obid back on. And then we have Keep Moving on Friday at 10 a.m. So we have a pretty packed week.
Excellent. Sounds wonderful. And Matt, you could just send it right to the second part of the show if you want to let us know what's coming up there.
Will do. And we have Chuck Joseph on this show. So everyone, please enjoy. Oop. 1 second. Sorry, everyone. Where is it?
Yeah, live television sometimes.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's yeah, I'm sorry. It just doesn't appear to be.
Coming up next, I am about to hand over the hosting reins to Bob Hamilton, who will be co-hosting with Tom, having a very interesting half-hour discussion about Hopkinton history with our favorite Chuck Joseph. So welcome, Chuck, and take it away, guys.
Hi, Chuck. Welcome in from
Hey, Bob.
the
How are you?
waiting room. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. And you can see that Tom Nappy's here with me. And we'd like to get started. If you can tell us, a lot of our viewers haven't seen you on our HCAM show before. I know you've been involved with basketball coaching a long time ago at the high school back in, I think it was 85. My daughter.
I apologize, everyone. It just doesn't seem to want to share for some reason.
Well, Matt, I did hear the audio. I think maybe you were sharing the wrong screen. So if you just play that video and then share the screen that the video is playing on.
I'm trying to do that. It's not giving me the option to do that, Tom. I'm very sorry.
All right. Well, we'll look into that further. But while we do, I do have some exciting news. We will have baseball, summer baseball on HCAM. It may not be Ashland Legion baseball, but it is Ashland sort of Legion baseball. The Ashland Sevens, they are called. And we do have our first couple of games this week. We have one Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And then also on Thursday night at 5:45 are the games. And we'll have our broadcast schedule posted to our website as well. But the Ashland Sevens, they've already played 3 away games, and they are 3-0 to start the season. So it should be some exciting baseball. And for those of you that don't know about the Ashland Legion program, it's really a mixture of players from Ashland, Holliston, and also Hopkinton as well. And it's really the best talent from around the area. And they had a very fun run last year all the way to the state championship. So they are certainly hoping to do that again this season. Well, actually, it won't really be a state championship this season, but they are competing pretty much with a lot of Zone 6 teams. So you got Westwood there, Frank,
I think I got it.
stuff like
I
that.
think I got
so
it,
should
Tom.
be fun stuff. All right. So here's Chuck Joseph.
I just want to apologize again, and here's the show. Oh.
Coming up next, I am about to hand over the hosting reins to Bob Hamilton, who will be co-hosting with Tom,
Nope.
having a very
I'm sorry, everyone. I do not know what is going on with this right now. This program just does not seem to want to share on my computer. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I will try to get it going on mine. And while I do that, we'll just give you maybe you could just give another little reminder of some of the programs that are coming up this week, Matt.
Yeah. Well, we have a Shok Ghosh on Wednesday, and they're going to be talking about what the schools are looking to do, I believe, with coming in the fall. And then Jake Obid he's going to be talking more about Ashland Legion, like you were just talking about.
All right, I think I got it. So I am going to try to get that going. Again, folks, we apologize for the technical difficulties, but hopefully the third time's a charm. So we'll give it another try right now.
Sure. Well, Bob, there's a million different directions to go in. You know, there's kind of the really early history as to how Hopkinton got started, and then there's the more stuff that we have around the 1880s forward, where we have photography that really kind of captures some of the industrial era as it began in the latter part of the 1800s into the early 1900s, and then it went dormant again. You know, for the early part of the 1900s, and then of course was resurrected in the 1970s till now, where we've seen our biggest period of growth.
Well, that's a long history period, but I know I came to Hopkinton back in, I think it was 73 or 74, and raised two daughters here, and I've been here ever since. I didn't know you wanted to go back to the 1800s. That's a lot of history.
Well, there's a million different ways to do it, you know. One of the things we could do is we could just take a look at some photography, and that
That'd be great.
Stimulates people, you know, in terms of what they want to look at and all that.
Yep.
So if it's all right with you to share a screen, Bob, would that be all right?
Yes, if you can get it to share, should be able to.
Let me see what I can do here.
Yeah.
So you guys, can you see where I'm at right now?
Yeah, well, I see
All right. So this
plethora
is
of pictures.
Yeah. Let me kind of walk people through. I'll pick out a few pictures
Go ahead.
that we can kind of play with. Okay. So this is a great shot. This is one of my favorite pictures of Hopkinton. This is around the 1890s, somewhere in there. This is a shot of what today would be Middlesex Bank and the pizza place, Bill's Pizza. So the central building, I don't know if you guys, can you see my cursor if it's on the screen
Yes.
here?
Yes.
Okay. So this building right here, the Park House, was the second hotel that was there. There was a Highland House before that. And it had beautiful, beautiful wooden structures. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. There's a bank over here on the side. And if you you kind of spend a little bit of time with this, you'll see that there's an arched way back here for horses to come in there. It's called the Hotel Livery Stable. So you bring your horses out back and board your horses overnight and then stay at the hotel. And this was a swing period, if you will, because we had hitching posts here along the street, but we had our first electricity lines coming through up at the top here. So this is right around the 1900s. We have a bicycle here as well. And so you get to kind of see Hopkinton.
Yep.
So this is a picture of what would be today the town hall. So this was the second town hall that was there, because we lost a lot of buildings by fire. Let me go back a little bit here if I can. This is a kind of the same period, if you will. Are you guys seeing the photograph that's up here
Yes.
now?
Yep.
Yeah, so this was that bank that was there.
Right.
This was the Park House that was here. This would be today what is Bill's Pizza. We're right next door. And you can see that there's a trolley car here.
Oh, yeah.
So Hopkinton had trolleys that came through. There's also a horse and buggy.
Now, was that building in front of the trolley, was that the town hall at the time?
So this is post 1903, because this building was constructed in 1903, the current brick town hall. That's the third town hall on that site. There was two wooden town halls on that site before, both of which burned down. And I believe the last one was in 1890. And then it took them about 13 years, and there was a huge debate in town hall about should they build another wooden one or should they build it out of brick. And it's kind of the Three Little Pigs story. You know, they said, well, we lost this one by fire twice, so we're going to build the next one by brick. And lo and behold, they did, you know.
But they didn't have any problem with flooding in that.
No, they did not. Actually, they did in the basement. So that's been around for a while. But it wasn't a fire system that caused it.
Yeah.
And then this is a big granite water trough for horses right here, which still, I believe it's out behind the fire station now. That same one that was moved. So there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. This is kind of the 1930s, same location. All right, you can see that there's much more electrical wire in there. This was the furniture store in here that eventually burned down. This is, right where the Thai restaurant is now.
Yep.
That same wall is still there.
That's the wall that my wife always told the kids, don't go sitting on that wall.
Right. That's exactly right. And this is the 1930s also in the center of town. This goes up to 1950s now, 1960s, where
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you're Brown
Yep.
and Smith's used to be the old breakfast place that was there.
Yeah, I remember that.
And of course, that's what's there today. And so this was on the corner of, this is where the gas station is now, right on the corner of 85 and 135.
Right.
And it was the Hopkinton Cleaners back then, and that came down. But we have a million different things we can do here, in terms of what you want to go see.
Yep, there's the state. Oh, what is that? Thompson's Boot Manufacturer.
Yeah, so Thompson's Boot Manufacturer, and if you look, I can't blow it up with the current software that I have it on right now, but this little sign right here says Grove Street. So this was the boot factory that is where CVS is today.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is Grove Street going up and Main Street running in front.
Now, when did that come down? Do you know?
Yeah, so that came down. It would have been early 1900s.
Oh.
Because this was a big boot factory in the 1800s, and if you blow this up, you can actually see people in the windows. Some of the people who are working in the factory. It's really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And this was their post factory. This was the town barn for a lot of years.
Is this down by Ash Street?
This is right here.
Oh, that's
right
college.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the same location. That's where this was.
Oh.
So if you go back a little bit, this is looking down from Town Hall towards 85.
Yep.
All right, so that's the view.
Uh-huh.
All right, and that's what it looked like back then. And then if you go a little further, you're looking now up towards Town Hall from 85. So that's what you see today. And that's what was there back in the 1880s. Yep. So there's a lot of photographs like that. I mean, there's so much history here that there's a million different things we could look at, all over town, different areas you want to look at.
Now, did you collect these photographs yourself? Where did you get them? Did you get them from the library?
Yeah. So a lot of them came from the library's collection that the Hopkinton Library has. And then there were 2 books that were published. They were bound. Let me see if I can do this here. They were bound in this pamphlet, this beautiful leather-bound pamphlet. And the library has one of them that's a little bit disheveled, but it still has some great photography in there. And then, as has happened over the years, as I've done these various history lectures, so a citizen in town brought me one that was in phenomenal condition that they had found in their attic. So we were a pretty substantial town for a lot of years.
Chuck, do you have a favorite time period that you like studying the most in Hopkinton history?
Yeah, well, there's 2 really. I'll tell you, Tom. The first one is, I don't know if people are aware that we have all of our original town meeting notes back to the 1700s.
Wow.
And there's a whole story as to how they survived the 3 fires in Town Hall, because Town Hall burned down burned down twice. And these town meeting notes have survived intact. And I have gone back as a former American history teacher. I went back and read all of 1775 and 1776 and read all the handwritten notes during the American Revolution. And that was really a favorite period. It's a remarkable exercise.
What kind of condition are those notes currently in?
They're in great shape. They're now kept in a climate-controlled room, and you have to get access to it, and you have to handle it with care and gloves and all that kind of stuff. But when you read it, the real challenge is that the folks who were recording the town meeting notes were not terribly fluent, and so there's a lot of misspellings, and every time the recorder changed, you'd have to get used to their writing and what they couldn't spell and what they could spell. And, it's in 1775, it's really remarkable to read through, because they used to call town meeting in the name of His Majesty. This town meeting would be called in the name of His Majesty. And then you read through and you can read the turmoil that's occurring as the revolution is starting to approach. And then at one point in July, I think it's in July or maybe October of 1776, where for the first time it says this town meeting is now held in the name of these United States. And that sends a chill up your spine when you read that for the first time, because you realize that there's no going back now. You know, they threw the gauntlet down, and they were either going to make it or they weren't going to make it.
Wow.
So that's one of my favorite periods. The other is the whole shoe industry period, when this town was, it was just remarkable that we were producing, I think in about 1885 to 88, we were producing about 11,000 pairs of shoes per day.
Wow.
And that's a pretty significant industry.
Pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And I'll show people a couple of things they might recognize. So this is a house on the town common. I think you guys may recognize it. Yeah. This was the Claflin house, and of course Lee Claflin was lived across the street, but he was a huge shoe factory owner in town and a major player nationally politically. His son William goes on to become the governor of Massachusetts and the United States senator. And this house actually looked like this at its heyday.
Wow.
So that was quite a structure.
That was a spectacular view from the Commons.
Oh yeah. You could see all the way into what is today Boston. So you can see this little tower here in the middle. You know, was actually this tower right here. So it went up quite a bit higher than it does today. And there's a couple others in here. These homes are across the street on the Common. That's what they look like today. And this is what they looked like back in the turn of the century of 1900s. So there's a lot of stuff like that. You know, there's some great stories about Claflin family and how they were ardent abolitionists, and in the 1860 Republican National Convention, I believe it was in Chicago, they were instrumental in nominating a lanky senator from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln to the presidency. And they came back and founded the New England Theological Seminary up in upstate Vermont, which later moved to metropolitan Boston, and today we know it as Boston University. So there's a fabulous history here that goes back that most people are not aware of, but it's really kind of fun. You think of your town differently, and you look at it differently when you see what's there and what used to be there. Let me see if I can grab a couple of other pictures here for you.
Well, these are great. They really give you a perspective on what it was like in Hopkinton, and it gives you an awareness of what Hopkinton really is. When I first moved out here, we came out because it was a quiet place to live. We moved out from Newton and said, oh, this is nice, quaint little town. But there's a lot of history here that built that up.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting one here. This was the Reservoir Hotel down at Lake Whitehall in the heart of Woodville. And this was there because there were factories throughout the Woodville area. The Wood family. Let me see if I can find some of those. Sorry for jumping around here. I wasn't really. So this was the carriage factory that was right down where today the post office is in Woodville. Yep. This was a major carriage factory and horse auctions. Here's a big horse auction going on in their barn. And there's says the carriage refactory there. This is looking back towards Hopkinton from Westboro. This brick building here, the house of George Wood, is still on the corner of Winter Street.
Do you know how many shoe factories there were in town at that time?
At one time, there were 11.
11?
Yeah, there were 11 factories, yeah.
I take it there are no remnants of those 11 factories left.
Oh, actually there is, yeah. Let me see if I can find that for you. Gotta go see which direction I'm going in here. Yeah, okay. So we all know where this is today, yes? Right there on Main Street, right?
Yeah.
So if you go back, let me find my cursor here. If you go back, this was the shoe factory that was there, the Crooks Brothers Boot Manufactory. So that's right on the corner of the street. And so when you drive by that today, this is what you see.
Right.
But if you were back there in the 1800s, it was a gorgeous building.
Right. They must have employed a lot of people in that area.
Yeah, there were about 400 people in that factory. This was on the corner of Pleasant and Hayden Row.
Mark Woodot?
House, yep, Stevie's house right there. And that was one of the factory that is where CVS is today. This was one of the factory overs, Erasmus Thompson House. And of course, that was the factory that was there. So this was one of the shoe factories.
Oh.
It has since been completely reworked. I think it was in the 1950s or 60s. They put a brick skin on the building, but it was a wooden building. And let me see that one. I have a shot of it somewhere. I apologize for not being
That's
too
all right.
well organized here. This is a shot from the cemetery looking up to the center of town. So this is over here is St. John's Church. And if you'll notice across the street, there's another church that's wooden. And that was the Methodist Episcopal Church, which pre-existed St. John's. So Church Street was actually named for the Methodist Church and not for St. John's Church. But now that the Methodist Church is gone and St. John's is standing, everybody assumes it was named for St. John's. This is where our current town hall is today, and that was a magnificent shoe factory there.
Yeah.
Wooden structure.
Was there a certain resource in Hopkinton that encouraged all this shoe and boot?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tom. No, actually what happened was, and I'll see if I can pull that out for you. This gentleman right here, this is how shoes used to be made. They were hand stitched. So you would take the upper shoe and you would stitch it to the leather sole in the bottom. And that's why in the center of Hopkinton and a lot of what we call the shoe houses, the little kind of similar vertical 10 by 20s and 20 by 20s, there's a little shed on the back, and that's where this shoe industry began. And then a gentleman in Hopkinton, a young man named Joseph Walker, figured out that he could attach the soles to the uppers using wooden pegs. And he started the whole method of pegging. And then in conjunction with some engineers from Worcester Polytech, they incorporated the steam engine to create machines to peg those shoes. And they could peg a shoe in about 14 seconds. And so that's when all those resources came together to change the whole shoe industry as we know it today.
Wow. And
Yeah.
we do have a YouTube question. Our good friend John Ritz wants to know, what were the nationalities that settled in Hopkinton initially?
Sure. Well, initially, we had, of course, the British were the first to settle here. But early on, there was a Scotch Presbyterian group that was very much part of the early settlers. And there was quite a bit of discord between the different religious sects, the Congregationalists from the British side and the Presbyterians from the Scottish side. And at one point, there was not a significant separation of church and state back then. So the taxes were collected by the minister and were administered in that fashion. So I'm not exactly sure how that all worked out, but that was the system back then. And at one point, the Scotch Presbyterians refused to adhere to some of the Congregationalist rules, and so they were expelled from the town. They were just thrown out. And so the Scottish went to Western Massachusetts and started a town out there called New Glasgow, and that's, I think it's called Blandford today. But there was, and then when to your point, Tom, in the 1850s, when the shoe industry was taking off here, there was a tremendous need for labor, real manual labor in these factories, which coincided with the potato famine in Ireland. So the vast majority of young women who came over into Boston found work out in the shoe mills in the western suburbs, and Hopkinton was one of those places. In fact, there's a great picture here. This is a picture of some of those young girls and young men who worked in the factory. This is the Bridges Shoe Factory, which is located right where Town Hall is today. And you can see the people standing in the doors here. There wasn't a lot of OSHA rules on safety back then, but if you take a look at the faces of some of these, this is one of my favorite pictures of Hopkinton back then, because I think it captures the industry of the time. And back at that time, of course, this is the fire of 1900. There were 3 major fires that actually destroyed the shoe industry in Hopkinton.
What caused this particular fire?
Well, there was a lot of controversy about what caused the fires, whether or not they were deliberately set, or whether or not it was the chemicals that they were using to tan the hides. And it devastated. So what we would know as the town hall side of Main Street is the side that burns 3 times. And here you can see that the Congregational Church, this is the second Congregational Church on that site. The first one had burned down in the fire of 1880, and then they built this gorgeous church. This was probably one of the most beautiful wooden structures in all of Hopkinton's history. And then this bell tower was taken down in the 1939 hurricane.
Did a lot of these shoe factories that are built of wood in Hopkinton predate a lot of the factories that we see up in Lowell that are all built out of brick?
Yes, they do, but Lowell, yes and no, because Lowell was primarily, it was a textile industry, and I think it was wealthier, it was a little more centralized, and I think it had a little more money to build their factories from the beginning. But if you look over here, you can see that's that old hotel livery stable sign that I had showed you before. And you can see these buildings, the 1900 fire, that was what was left of that huge factory where Town Hall is. So it was very hard for the town to recover from these. That whole side of Main Street's wiped out in 1882. This is looking down Hayden Row Street from up near the high school. You can see there's a lot more trees back then. Of course, this is the whole fire department. This was the Woodville Fire Department, and that's their pumping, and they won the state championship in terms of firefighters who were all volunteers back then. So anyway, we could go on and on. This is I don't want to bore you guys to death.
You're not boring us. You're not boring us at all.
Great stuff.
Yeah. This is I always like this one. This is this, if you can see the shoe industry over here, Hopkinton had its own currency. And you got to remember that there was not a centralized currency pre-Civil War. And this currency of Hopkinton Bank, which was worth $2, which was a significant amount of money back then, and the depiction was of the shoe industry in Hopkinton.
Wow. Could that only be used in Hopkinton?
No. That was tied to the reputation of the bank. So in the state of Massachusetts, this was legal currency. Yeah. This goes back to the Healing Springs down at Lake Whitehall. Anyway, we could go on and on. You know, there's all different facets to it, to our history, and I'm not sure if how you want to proceed from here, but I just thought I'd give a little sliver of what's out there.
Well, that's good. We have about 5 minutes left in our show. If you had others you wanted to show, that would be fine. But
sure. Well, I'll show a couple of iconic ones that people.
Oh yeah.
So this is the Stone Tavern.